He's old enough to know better, but is he still too young to care? Wade Hayes on the Music Universe podcast. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I am good, man. How about you?
Oh, man, I love when I reach out on a lark and an interview just becomes awesome. And actually, with this one, I texted you, if you remember, just this morning, because I sent it on Wednesday and they just got back to me. Hey, do you know who Wade Hayes is? You were like, of course. I'm like, well, we have him today. I'm like, okay. And you were like, yes.
Let's do it. And so glad we did. Super nice, down-to-earth guy, and he's a storyteller as well. I love it. I love all the interviews we've been doing, man. It's great.
Yeah, this is fun. And the stuff in the pipeline, you don't know, some 90s superstars are on the horizon for us, and it's just fun. I'm really, really trying to make this time of being at home fun because I have 8 hours on the clock, and I'm very happy that those 8 hours end in the middle of the day for me, so that we can do things like this, and it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun.
It is, and I've been, putting these together and then trying to make a schedule of when they should run, and then we kind of mix it up a little bit based on, the currency of events and stuff too sometimes, but these are really fun. They're great, and I don't know one country artist we haven't spoken with that didn't have a Joe Diffie story to share.
Yeah, same with Wade, and it's just I literally lean back like, of course.
Yeah.
It's so connected, and so here's our interview with Wade Hayes.
Wade Hayes, welcome to the Music Universe podcast. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. You staying trying to stay sane during this quarantine?
I actually am. I have a pretty good project going on. I mess around with old houses, and I'm working on another one right now. And I'm really, if I'm not at home, I'm out here working. So it's been okay as far as that goes. I've really am missing playing music live, though. It's about to kill me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you and everyone else. What are you working on anything musically other than the houses while you're at home?
I have not been. I think I haven't written a song in a month or two, and I've really been concentrating on just doing this and practicing when I get a chance. But I honestly posted something on Facebook about doing a Facebook Live thing. I've been watching some of what Steve Warner's doing, and it's been really, really cool what he's doing for his fans, and it's been very much enjoyable. And I would like to do something like that, but but that's the only thing. I wish I had another project working on it. We just kind of released an album at the end of last year called Who Saved Who, and that's fairly recent. So
yeah, tell us about the album a little bit.
That's this is the first interview I've given since the title track Who Saved Who was a song that I wrote about this old dog that I had, and I found him one night at a filling station in the middle of the night. He was a stray dog, and he jumped up in my truck. He was rail thin, obviously, hadn't eaten, and had some open wounds. He was in pretty rough shape. So I took the dog home and nursed him back to health, and he'd been the best dog I've ever had in my life, and that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
So, and I wrote the song when I started noticing he had gotten really white, and he was getting old, and I realized, our time together was not infinite. And it was alarming, to say the least. But anyway, that dog, I finally, a couple of weeks ago, he passed away, and I've been pretty blue about it, to be honest with you. That's kind of the reason I haven't been doing anything on social media. But and this is actually the first interview I've given since that happened. So his name was Jack, and I miss him terribly. But the whole album was centered around that song. I kind of wrote that as just a little therapy session. I did it one night at a writer's night, and people really, really reacted to it. So I recorded it. And as with, everything, every time I come up with something like that and realize I need to make a record, I start going through my notebooks and finding songs that I think suck the least, and trying to find songs to put together for a record. So that's kind of how it came about. And there's another song on there called X Factor I like a lot. It's a lot of fun, and it's got some good stuff on it. I enjoyed making this record an awful lot.
Now, that song "Who Saved Who," is that a reference to your dog being there for you and being emotional support during your cancer battle?
Well, yes, that's exactly right. Interesting you should bring that up, because that, not only emotional, but I believe that dog was instrumental in my recovering so strongly and quickly, because, that it was just he and I for a long, long time. And, you still have to walk your pet, your dog. So
Right.
we would walk at least a mile in the morning and a mile at night every day. And, getting out and doing that and staying active, no matter what, I believe really, really helped me recover. And I was very thankful to have him, to get me out and get me up and doing things. And I believe it helped a lot. So.
Well, stage 4, that's not an early stage. I mean, what was your prognosis when you were diagnosed? How'd you handle it? And how'd you pull through? Because that's amazing. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I do thank God. I mean, from statistically, it's nothing short of a miracle. And I, started doing research and I wouldn't advise anybody to read statistics if they find themselves in that situation, because it's bleak. And I didn't know this until after the fact, way after the fact, but Dr. Jordan Berlin there at Vanderbilt, he's the guy that told me to go live my life. And when I wrote that song, I got the idea from him. And we've since then become big friends. But at the time I was diagnosed, he presented my case, and nobody wanted to touch it. They just wanted to keep me comfortable because I had cancer that bad. And Dr. Berlin saw a way he thought he could do it. And he really fought for them to do surgery and attempt to fight this thing. And had it not been for him in my corner, I know I wouldn't be here today. So he really, really championed the surgery. And it was a long battle, It took years to get over it. And, I had, stage 4, I had it, and it had metastasized and gone to several places in my body. And I lost count of surgeries and all of the chemotherapy, and then it ended up coming back, as it often does when you're stage 4. And got to repeat the process again, but it took about 3 years to get rid of it completely. And to this day, again, I thank God he made it clear to me that he's the reason I'm still around and put me in such hands as Dr. Berlin. But it is nothing short of a miracle that and I'm just, I'm still trying to figure out why my life was spared. I try my best, but certainly feel like I come up short often. But
No, well, we're definitely glad you're here and that you beat it. I know we were talking to.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we were talking to fellow '90s country star John Barry the other day about his cancer as well.
Yeah.
And so glad
he's had a rough go of it too.
Yeah, and so glad he beat that as well. So the songs on "Go Live Your Life" have to clearly be about just that conversation you had with the doctor, right?
Yeah, that was the exact thing that happened. I was in his office after the second time through the cancer battle, and he wanted to take how it all came about was he wanted to take the port out, and that's something that's surgically implanted to administer chemotherapy. easier. And so he wanted to take it out, and I didn't want him to because, I thought it was going to come back again, and I was scared. And he said, you need to go live your life. And he said, this is nothing short of a miracle that you're cancer-free. You need to go live your life. And so I took his advice and let him take the port out. And he, later he told me, I needed to start dating and find a girlfriend, all this business, and which I took his advice and ended up marrying. I went out with the hottest girl I could find and ended up marrying her. And so
I love that.
Yeah. So it's true. He actually, he told me that. So it's kind of a joke that my wife and I have with Dr. Berlin, but that all is true. And he's an amazing guy.
Yeah. Well, my goodness, he sounds like it, and it sounds like that album is dedicated to him almost, because
he's funny. He loves it that we were in Billboard and with his story, and he got to show that off to all his colleagues. And he was pretty jazzed about that. I ended up doing a commercial kind of a project with a big pharmaceutical company out on the West Coast because of that song as well. And it was a blessing all the way around. And it was a really amazing time in my life. And just, you're trying to make lemonade out of lemons, and we certainly did.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
I know you're about to, you've been on the road, of course, and this has been
Oh, yeah.
affecting everyone. When was your last show?
Oh, my last show was in February. And right before the lockdown, I was supposed to, when this thing started hitting, I was on my way or about to get on an airplane to go to Washington State, where all of this kind of started. Yeah. And thank God they called and canceled it right before. That was then, after that, everything started canceling. And looks like I may get to go back to work at the end of May. Fingers crossed. I sure hope so. I've realized here lately how much I miss playing, and I really, I'm, all the time messing around with stuff and guitar stuff, and I look forward to trying it on stage, and trying out. I may be messing around with an old song that I've loved my whole life and want to do it at a writer's night or something. I do a lot of acoustic solo stuff, and that, on those shows I get to do pretty much, I've got carte blanche, whatever I want to do. And, I may pull out an old Jimmy Webb song or something like that. So it's, I miss that as much as anything.
Well, we're so glad you're still with us to share music new and old. It's the obvious question you get asked probably in every single interview, but one of my favorite 90s country songs, bar none, is Old Enough to Know Better. Mm-hmm. And I have to know the story behind that song because it is so catchy, so much fun. I think it encapsulates the 20s perfectly. We're old enough to know better, have the legs underneath us, but do we care? No.
Yeah, it's so funny, but you're absolutely right about that song. And it does have a really interesting story. At the time that I wrote that song, I was I hadn't been in Nashville very long, and backstory, I grew up building houses with my dad. He was a contractor. So naturally, when I moved to Nashville, I got a job building houses first thing. And I also, very soon after that, got a job playing lead guitar for Johnny Lee. If you remember Johnny Lee, Looking for Love.
No, Johnny Lee. I've interviewed him. He's wonderful. Yes.
He is wonderful. He's still a very good friend of mine. And we're still, he still texts me a dirty joke often. And he's just a great, funny, he's ornery as can be, but he's got a big old heart of gold. He really, really does. Yeah. And really looked after me when I was a kid, just very naive country boy. And I didn't know anything about anything. And he really watched out for me. But So anyway, I'm playing guitar for Johnny and have to be at work at 7:00 in the morning, but Johnny would get wound up sometimes and want to play till 3:00 in the morning. And, that's still, I still had to be at work early swinging that hammer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that song came, it had kind of course you take your poetic license with things, but that's where the song came from.
Yeah, I love that song too, because I remember that was a side note. I play drums, and I remember cranking up my CD player with that song and just going to town playing along with it in my basement.
That great, Lonnie Wilson, that great intro lick on the drums is just so perfect, thundering. He's so good. Side note on that, Lonnie Wilson, the guy who played on one of my first records, who's playing on that, Old Enough to Know Better, he played drums on my latest record, first time in, 15 years.
Oh, awesome.
So, and we really had a great time. He's still so good, and he's a great singer, too. He sang background on a lot of this stuff. So.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
amazing. How'd you get him to do it? How'd you get him to come back after all those years?
Oh, he plays on hit records that are on the radio right now. He's still playing a lot, and he's out playing drums for George Strait as well. But we just ran into each other and started talking, and he told me he had a studio. In fact, no, it was Joe Diffie. I was hanging around with Joe Diffie, and which is another thing I've been pretty blue about this year. Joe and his wife and my wife, we're all pretty good buddies, and we go out and eat and just hang out. And there was a blow, what happened with Joe. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But,
And it's a shame to say I was not as familiar with Joe Diffie's music before he passed as I am now. But every single person that we have interviewed has had a Joe Diffie story. Isn't that right, buddy?
Oh yeah.
Every person.
Yeah, we had.
He's come out.
he was awesome. Yeah.
He seemed like he was such an amazing guy.
He was just very kind, and he and I had done very recently a tribute to Earl Thomas Conley, and we sang that song that Earl Thomas and Keith Whitley sang called "Brotherly Love" at this deal. It was with Blake Shelton and Luke Bryant and Jason Aldean and Joe and me. And it was really an incredible show, a lot of great artists on it. So anyway, Joe and I sang this tune together. And then we had been going out to eat a few times there, and gotten reacquainted. He was one of the first tours that I was ever on. He was just such an amazing singer, and just couldn't believe it when we lost him. I couldn't. His wife had texted my wife as soon as it happened, and we just were floored, So anyway, yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. Well, this time is a tough time in general. I mean, I could imagine with your history that it's probably particularly dangerous for you to be out in the public compared to somebody else who hasn't gone through everything you've been through. So it's a thrill that you're staying safe.
Yeah, that is what I've heard, and I don't go out, unless I need to, obviously, and fortunately I haven't needed to, and I am married now and have somebody that doesn't mind going to the grocery store or whatever. I love that, but it's everything is other than that, everything is pretty good. I'm very thankful to be alive, and one of the things that when I was sick, I realized how much of this life that I'd taken for granted, how many of the liberties and just the blessings in my life that are every day that I took for granted. And it's the same thing with this COVID virus and being stuck at home and again, reminded of how much I take for granted and how much this life is a blessing. So just, trying to count my blessings, and that's a fact.
Yeah, and I think being home too gives you more time to reflect on all that and to reflect exactly what you might be missing out by being gone all the time too. So it kind of a full circle moment if you think about it.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I'm just, I cannot tell you enough how ready I am to go out and play a gig. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Well, I got a venue you should hit up when you're back on the road. It's called and this isn't sponsored. I'm just picturing you with your music because I saw Eddie Montgomery there and he killed. I want all of these classic '90s artists to come up to New York. There's a great venue called Mulcahy's Pub on Long Island. You should check them out and see if you can get yourself booked there because I think they'd eat your music and your story up. Absolutely.
Oh man, I'd love Mulcahy's Pub.
Yeah, write that down.
And then,
I don't know why that popped into my head.
And then if you ever make it back to Bakersfield, you should play the Crystal Palace. I know you're a big Buck fan.
Oh yeah. We've played the Crystal Palace several times, and we've actually been trying to get back in there, trying to coordinate a date when I'm out on the West Coast. So
that'd be awesome.
I would love to do that. It's yeah.
Well, I'll definitely be there if you come out because that's where I'm based right now.
Right on, man. Great. Yeah, great. Yeah, I love Bakersfield.
Well, believe it or not,
so important to country music.
John Barry couldn't believe this when we talked to him the other day. It literally rained 4 days straight here.
No kidding.
I know. He couldn't believe it even rained, and then it wasn't 4 days at that time, but yeah, it rained up to like early this morning. Yeah. So we've had more rain than we can imagine.
Good grief, that is a lot for you guys, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if there was a song, a defining song that defined your career, that if you had to play it for the rest of your life or you were stuck on an island and could only play this song, I know it's like choosing one of your children, but what if there was a defining Wade Hayes song, what would you say it is and why?
Well, it would have to be Old Enough to Know Better. That was my very first song. It was a multi-week number one. It's for several reasons, really. It's fun. It's got Brent Mason plays a killer guitar solo on it. It's got great fiddle, great drums, and that song started everything. It changed my life, and it did define my adulthood. It really has been a blessing. It truly has been a blessing, and I'll forever be grateful to my songwriting mentor, Chick Raines, for writing that with me. And honestly, it was a blessing, and I would not have gotten to do this if it weren't for that song.
And you were, one more question, buddy, then I'll let you have a question, but you were so young when it happened. I just want to know about that whirlwind when it went to number one and it was there for multi-weeks, and you're just this 20-year-old, 20-something kid with this deep voice. You sound like you're, 10, 20 years older. What was it like for you in the media and the attention and the fame? I mean, how did you handle that in your as a 20-something-year-old?
I will tell you this. I was way too young and way too naive for that to happen. I wish it could have happened a few years later. Yeah. There were, I made some decisions young that like publishing and record deal stuff that I wouldn't have done had I been older and known how things worked better. And I say that regretfully, but it was white knuckle, wide-eyed every day back then, because you're talking about a kid that was from a town, a little farming community of about 2,000 people, had never been on an airplane, barely been out of the state of Oklahoma, and all of a sudden I'm traveling all over the United States on a plane every day. Yeah. And then I'm on the Brooks and Dunn tour, on Tracy Lawrence tour. It was too much and I was too young. And I honestly wish, I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity, but I wish it could have happened a couple years later, looking back. But, if you believe in God, which I do, and he has a plan and he knows what he's doing, I know everything happens for a reason. It has to.
Absolutely.
But, that would be what I would say is it was it was incredible. It was the best time of my life, but it was a lot.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it takes a toll on you. And I'll say one of my favorite cover songs ever is your version of Wichita Lineman, and
Oh, thank you.
I've yet to find an album that is on. But are you still
Yeah,
performing
it's
that?
not on one.
I know it's on
Yeah,
a
it's not on an album.
it's on a single, and I've been looking for it to try to find it because I'm a
Yeah,
physical. I like to collect the physical media. Are you still performing that
I'm
live
with you.
in your shows?
Oh yeah, that's honestly that's one of the most requested tunes that we get. I mean, it seems like everybody likes that one. I love that song too. And I've been working on, Jimmy Webb, the guy who wrote that, is just a fascinating guy to me. And I can't imagine writing as many hit songs as he has. But he was from Oklahoma as well. And he wrote that and Galveston and Still Within the Sound of My Voice, and another one a tune called The Highwaymen. That's just brilliant. How do you do that? I don't know. And I like to play those tunes at home and work on them because chord wise they're very interesting, lyrically they're interesting, and just that Jimmy Webb. I'm a huge fan of his.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, do you know why that was never put on an album by chance?
That was it was one of those things. I was going through some big changes at the record label back then, and they were changing people, different faces coming through, hiring and firing, and everything was in disarray at that time, and everybody was making decisions, and somebody would come along and change the decision. It was an odd, really difficult time actually, and and that's another one of the reasons I wish that I would have been a little bit older and had a little more, I don't know, knowledge and say of how things went.
Sure.
But I certainly was too young to know what was going on as well. So.
Well, it sounds like it was a quick education, to say the least.
No, gosh, it was. But I sure am thankful that I get to play music for a living. It's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's hope you can get back to that blessing as soon as possible. And that if you come up to New York or go out to Bakersfield, one or the other of us will be there cheering you on. And please send us if we can talk offline here when we wrap. I have some questions for you regarding the album because we probably want to cover that and review it.
Okay.
So
sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
But for now, I will say thank you so much, Wade, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you, guys. I've enjoyed it.
Now, you could tell he just wanted to talk, which is the really great thing. When somebody comes on and they don't have talking points that they want to cover, I mean, we know their bios. We often have their bios in front of us, even if we know their stuff, just so we remind ourselves what we want to hit on. But sometimes, as with this, that just gets thrown out the window, and you just talk.
Oh yeah, those are the great ones there, the conversations, and we're super honored that we were his first interview since the single was released. Like I think he said late last year. As you heard, he's gone through some things, losing his dog, and of course his good friend Joe Diffie. So we're completely honored that he took time out to give us that first interview back,
Yeah. So how do we top it? I don't know. I don't know if we are going to top it or if we should just be. I think it's just, keep going and with an open mind and open arms and just see what comes our way, because sometimes it's something very impactful and meaningful like Wade Hayes.
Oh, yeah, and I've still got tears in my eyes from the cancer talk. It was just so emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, for the Music Universe podcast, I'm Matt.
And I'm Buddy. Thanks for listening, and keep checking out themusicuniverse.com.